Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if Naruto entered the Kyuubi's mind and faced love and destiny. Part 1. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Saturday morning dawned, and the only sounds from Naruto's apartment were the usual snores, followed by thumps, followed by cries of pain, obscenities, and more thumps. Naruto was waking up. The first thump, he fell out of bed. The cry, he'd landed on his skull. Swearing, he stumbled into the bathroom, stubbed his toe, fell into the bath, and, in his wriggling to escape the evil shower curtain of entanglement, he somehow had contrived to turn the shower on, full blast, and soak himself with ice-cold water. Man, today is just not my lucky day, Naruto sighed. He'd passed his genin exam, pranked everyone in the village, and even developed an extremely inappropriate jutsu that once worked against Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage. Did the universe give him a break? No, it did not. Sighing, he opened his ramen cupboard, seeking to console himself in his favorite food. Alas, however, not a single cup of instant ramen stood within. In a manner reminiscent of Homer Simpson, he fell to his knees, raised his arms and eyes to the heavens, and, weeping comically, howled, "No ooh." As the echoing shout resounded throughout the village, Naruto was already out of his door, speeding to the one place he could guarantee he'd taste his beloved noodle-based meal, Ichiraku ramen. As he hove into sight, the Ichiraku stand's shutters slammed up, and the smell that assailed Naruto's nostrils was miso ramen, Ayame style. An extra burst of speed, and the blonde was perched on his usual stool, where a bowl the size of a bird bath waited, steaming in the morning sun. Naruto thanked Ayame, kissing her on the cheek enthusiastically, before digging in with his customary lack of manners, too absorbed with inhaling his breakfast to notice the faint blush that warmed Ayame's cheeks, and finished in record time. Thanks, Ayame. I needed that, he said, placing a 10 ryo note on the counter, before adding another 5 1 ryo coins. A little extra, for such good food and prompt service, the boy added cheerfully, strolling in the direction of the mini market, in search of provisions to stock his cupboards with. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. 1 hour, 27 minutes later. Naruto staggered out of the N-Mart, almost hidden under the weight of several bulging carrier bags. Unable to see where he was headed, he crashed into someone, and only held on to his groceries through sheer determination. Placing the bags down, he turned to see who he'd collided with, and smiled happily at the sight of Hinata Hyuga, and bowed to her, greeting her as politely as he could. "Konnichiwa, Hinata-san," he whooped. "Great day, isn't it?" Hinata smiled timidly back, and replied in the affirmative. As the pair chatted for a while, a strange feeling washed over Hinata, but she was too focused on not fainting, while still making coherent responses to her crush's comments, that she missed it completely. After 15 minutes had passed, Naruto looked at his battered wristwatch. "Ah, crud, look at the time, I gotta go, Hinata-san. I got a lot of things to do today, but I'll maybe see you later, K." Again, the strange power filled Hinata from top to toe, and she answered, in a manner that she would never have normally had the courage to, Naruto-kun. "Would you mind, if I spent the day with you?" Naruto blinked as he tried to decipher the last part of Hinata's question. "Sure. I think I'd like that a lot." He grinned. The two genin walked together, Naruto leading the way, Hinata following, as she tried to work out what had come over her, before dismissing it. She had an entire day in the company of the blonde Jinchuriki, and she wasn't going to waste a second. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. As Naruto put the last of the shopping on the table, he felt the urge to pee. "Hey, Hinata-san." He called. Hinata appeared in the doorway, and he asked, "I gotta go to the bathroom, would you mind putting these away in the cupboards?" Hinata nodded, and watched as Naruto disappeared through a door on the far side of the room. At once, she fell to her knees, clutching her head as a voice she didn't recognize echoed through her. Obey, obey, obey. As the voice faded, Hinata rose. She knew what she had to do. She had to serve Naruto-sama, forever. She darted into life, seizing things from the bags and neatly stacking them in the correct cupboards. In mere moments, the cupboards were full and the bags were empty, but it wasn't enough for her master. Grabbing a brush from a corner, she swept the room, opened the windows, dusted the skirting, and was in the middle of washing up the dishes, when Naruto walked in, and stopped. Hinata saw. He began, making her jump. She spun on her heel, dropped into the seiza position, placed her hands on her knees, and bowed her head. Why yes, Naruto-sama. Naruto was taken aback. Not only was a cute girl in his apartment, she was cleaning it. And, as if that wasn't enough, she was calling him Sama. Naruto stared at the sight before him. The Hyuga princess, on her knees, in front of him, ready and willing to serve, was the sweetest thing he'd ever seen. Stand up, Hinata-san. Hinata stood up immediately. The words left his lips, but she admonished him, no, Naruto-sama, please, don't call me San. I am your slave, not your equal. Naruto stared again, eyes bugging out of his head. This was almost too much. His brain could not cope. His eyes lost their focus, rolled back in his head, and he crumpled to the floor. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Naruto's mindscape. Ooh. Naruto opened his eyes, and saw nothing. Hey, how about some light in here? He called. Instantly, a warm glow brightened the surrounding area, until Naruto could see he lay in a sewer. Where the hell is this place? I've never been here before, have I? This is no sewer, Kit. This is in fact, your mind. As the deep, rumbling voice quieted, Naruto brought his hands up in a crane-style guard, and called out in challenge, who's there? I'm telling ya, you don't know who you're messing with. The silence stretched, then the other voice returned, chuckling merrily. Hey. I didn't know who I'm messing with. My dear Kit, I know exactly whose body I'm trapped in, thank you very much. Naruto's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. 2 pointed ears, red fur, 2 glowing red eyes, 1 mouth filled with sharp teeth, 2 forepaws, 2 hind paws, and 1, 2, 3, 9 waving tails. Oh, my Kami. Naruto breathed. The eyes blinked slowly at him, showing mild interest. You're the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the 9-tailed fox. Naruto yelled. Yes, Kit, I am, but listen. I don't mean anyone any harm. If anything, I surrender myself to you. I am trapped in your mind, and you could quite easily defeat me. It's a lot harder for me to even communicate with my host, shall we say. Oh, let me slip into something a little more fitting. As the Kyuubi finished speaking, a haze of light surrounded it. When the light faded, an elderly woman was standing before a bewildered Naruto. Whoops, quavered the old lady. Again, the light. Now, a 6-year-old girl sat on the floor, sousing her thumb. She stopped sousing, and pulled her thumb out with a pop. Darn, once more, she said. The light reappeared a third time, cloaking the child. As it faded, the sight Naruto took in gave him a massive nosebleed. The teenage girl now before him was gorgeous. She had hip-length, dark red hair that flowed like water. She had creamy, pale skin that almost glowed. Her emerald eyes held no sign of malice, instead filled with warmth, love, and fear. Naruto had noticed these attributes, as well as seeing that the Kyuubi had large, D-cup braias, a pert, round as, and long, smooth legs. Her nipples were a pale rose color, and Naruto's thoughts ground to a halt. Nacked lady, he cried hoarsely. The Kyuubi tilted her head on one side, closing her eyes, and smiled, giggling a little. Like what you see, nay, Naru-kun. she said, softly, but still loud enough for him to hear. Naruto staggered upright, and started to shake. What's wrong with me? He wailed. The Kyuubi dashed over to him, and fell to her knees in front of him, her palms flat on the dank floor. Naru-kun, what is it? Did I do something wrong? She whimpered, her bottom lip quivering. Staring down at the penitent girl, Naruto started in fear. You, demon child, me, pain, you, fox, he muttered over and over. Kyuubi's heart filled with sadness, and she threw her arms around the shocked teen, and burst into floods of tears. I'm Su Hoori, Naru Kuun. She blubbered into his shoulder. It's AAALLL my FAAUULLTTT. Naruto's arms folded around the sobbing girl's back. Despite the fact that she was the Kyuubi, she was a crying girl right now, and Naruto never liked seeing anyone upset, even if they were the source of 16 years of pain and humiliation. He rocked the sobbing woman in his arms, and held her until her tears dried. She pulled away, and wiped her eyes, sniffing as she did. Naru-kun, she whispered. Can you ever forgive me? Naruto looked at the being before him, and he didn't see the nine-tailed fox, the destroyer of the leaf. He didn't see an enemy. He saw a fragile, tender-hearted, open, loving girl, about his age, staring up at him with pleading eyes. Leaning over her, he knelt down, and kissed her on the mouth, eliciting a startled squeak from her. Does that answer your question? He said softly, and then yelled as the girl launched herself into his arms, repeating, thank you, thank you, thank you. Knocking him off his feet, and onto his back. Perched on his chest, the girl's legs were slightly parted, giving a stunned Naruto a clear shot down between her thighs. Kyuubi, he spluttered, before she closed her legs, and smiled warmly at him. No, Naru-chan. Call me by my name, Kurama. Kurama, then. Can you explain what's going on? Hinata's been acting strange, calling me her master, do you know why? Kurama sat back, giving Naruto a good look at her tits. As a matter of fact, I do. I'm the cause of the problem. You see, I'm in heat, and my hormones are going to affect the females around you, driving them to fulfill your every desire, in order for you to fuck them. As a result, you are now capable of coming so much that the likelihood of you impregnating them is almost certain. Your stamina has also increased dramatically, meaning that you can now continue for hours without pause. I have given you my knowledge of all things Seoul, although I myself am still a virgin. I got it from watching my previous host making love a lot, she was a sex-crazed maniac. And one last thing, I offer myself to you, and have transferred a jutsu that a friend of mine invented, called the Rasengan to you. It's easy, once you get the hang of it. Now, I will see you later, I'm sure. Kissing him again, Kurama smiled sadly. Now, it's time for you to wake up, Naruto. Naruto, Naruto, wake up. Naruto. As Naruto opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was booze, right in his face. Hinata was kneeling over him, her chest almost slapping him as she tried to shake him into wakefulness. Nada, wa. Uumph. As Naruto opened his eyes and spoke, Hinata's face broke into a huge smile, and she grabbed his head and hugged him, nearly smothering her unfortunate love in her bountiful assets. As she stroked the back of his head, he stopped wriggling, and she let go enough for him to pull his face out of the marshmallow death pillows and catch his breath. Looking up at the pale eyes of the Hyuga heir, he asked, Hinata. What do you think of me? Hinata's eyes blazed with devotion as she blurted out, Oh, Naruto-sama. I am your willing slave, anything you desire will be yours if it within my power to give. You need only hint at something, and will do it, no matter what it is. Do you have an order for me, master? Naruto fell back, and stared aghast at her, mind whirring. So, what Kurama-chan said was true, he thought, and struggled to his feet supported by his classmate and fell onto his couch, as she knelt before him, clearly expecting something. Oh, tits. Naruto exclaimed. Immediately he said it, he mentally facepalmed. The moment he'd spoken, Hinata had stood, reached down, grabbed the hem of her shirt, and pulled it off, exposing her large, C-cups to her stunned master's gaze. With her customary blush in place, she murmured, "Is this how you like it, master?" Trying in vain to tear his gaze away from the white mountains in front of him, easily within reach, Naruto could not move. Finally, he stuttered, Hinata, put your shirt back on, please." Almost before he finished, the shirt was on, hiding those magnificent braias from sight once more. Hinata knelt again, bowing her head as she murmured, "As you wish, master. I have a request to ask, master, will you permit me to speak?" Naruto nodded, and Hinata raised her head, then continued. "It is time for me to make my bond oath with you. I will do this with you, if you will allow such an unworthy girl to serve you." Naruto pondered. He could say no, in which case, he would destroy Hinata's spirit, causing her to either die or attack him, or say yes, end up with a willing servant, a link to the Hyuga clan, and a skilled ally who would lay down her life to please him. He made his decision. "Hinata, I give you permission to speak your oath." The words rolled of his tongue, from somewhere deep in his psyche, and flowed out, setting the room trembling with power beyond comprehension. Hinata knelt in front of her master, speaking words that sang of long ago, far away times in a darker past. "We are bound, by wind's true breath, to serve from now, until my death. We are bound, by will of fire. Betray my lord, and face my ire. We are bound, by raging sea, to be your slave eternally. We are bound by strength of earth. I will give your children birth. We are bound, by lightning chain. Together now, complete again." Naruto felt the power in those words, and knew that if he accepted this oath, there would be no breaking it. This oath tied the intended targets' lives together, using ancient seals that no sage had ever unraveled. He opened his mouth, placed his hand, palm down, in front of Hinata, and recited, "Hinata, of the clan Hyuga. I hear your oath, and accept it in its entirety. May our pact be honored in the old way. Kiss my hand, and then receive your reward." Hinata, face aglow with joy, bent her head, and placed her lips on Naruto's fingers, shuddering as a current of energy passed into her, then stood. Naruto raised his right hand, gathered a tiny portion of chakra, concentrated, and spoke. "Ultimate binding seal of heaven's light." Placing his hand on Hinata's neck, he fed the chakra into her, and watched carefully, as a mark appeared, darkening and becoming clearer. It took the shape of a spiral of words in the ancient tongue, with symbols denoting the 5 elements Hinata had called on, spaced evenly around it. A bolt of lightning, a curled wave, a cloud, a flame, a boulder. The seal complete, Naruto dropped his hand, and his shoulders drooped. Hinata was his now, no longer a scion of the Hyuga. A pair of drinking saucers appeared on the floor between them, and Hinata picked one up, Naruto gathered the other, and they poured the contents into each other's mouths, swallowing, and placing the now empty saucers down, as the contract was completed by the sharing of sake. Hinata bowed, and straightened. "Now, master, come fuck me." She purred lustfully, and Naruto grinned like a fox, before leaping on Hinata, scooping her up, and flash-stepping into the bedroom, where he deposited the panting girl, before sitting on the bed, and ordering, "Girl, undress me, with your teeth." Hinata scrambled up next to him, sank her teeth into the hem of his t-shirt, and tugged it off, grunting cutely in her efforts. The shirt gone, she turned her attention to his shoes. Unlacing them took time, but she chewed and gnawed, finally relieving Naruto of his footwear and socks. His kill me orange cargo pants took a little more doing. She simply bit the button off the top, pulled the zip down, and tugged at his crotch gently, so as not to nip at the prize that lay within. After a few minutes, the only obstacle that stood in her way was a pair of frog-patterned boxers, which Hinata reached for, only for Naruto to stop her. "Now, it's your turn," he growled, sending shivers down her spine, and she submitted herself to him at once. Stretching out his hands, he grasped the hem of her shirt, swiftly tugged it up and off, and smiled appreciatively at the sight of Hinata's braids bouncing gently, and then seized her bra and broke the front clasp, tearing it away in a single move. Next to go were her pants, which lasted no more than a second when Naruto spun up a Rasengan, using it like a knife to slice away the cloth. His chakra control was so perfect, that he left no mark upon her silky white thighs. At last, they were both in only their lower coverings, Hinata in her lacy black panties that barely hid anything, and Naruto in his innocuous froggy briefs. Stillness stretched for a single, aching moment, and then, Naruto blurred forward, snatching in Hinata's knickers with a swift hook. Hinata struck like lightning with a gentle fist technique. The only casualties were the last remnants of clothing, leaving the pair utterly naked, showing each other their true faces. Naruto sank onto the mattress, and Hinata knelt between his legs, lifting her braids and wrapping them around Naruto's 7-inch pee. Bobbing her head down to lick at the tip whenever it emerged from her chest. Within seconds, her skillful technique had him on the edge, and he pulled her away, tipping her onto her back, then diving for her slit, lashing it with his tongue, driving tea in and around her lower lips, sousing hard of her clitoris as he pried it from under its hood. Flipping him off, Hinata lunged at him, and began sousing his CCK, trying to swallow as much as she could, and then squeaking in surprise as Naruto rotated her lower body onto his chest, resuming his feast. The pair of lovers drove each other closer to the edge with every suck and lick, but never quite over, always drawing back just before the fall. As they allowed the pleasure to fade, Naruto bent Hinata over the bed and placed himself at her entrance. Ready, Hinata-chan, he panted. Hinata, looking up at him from her position of her back, gasped, "Do it, Naru-kun." With the all-clear given, Naruto Uzumaki drove his hard, raging COK deep into Hinata's wet, willing cunt. Hinata's head fell back, her mouth gaped, and she screamed like a banshee. Kia! Naruto paid no heed to her cries, instead roaring out in a wordless howl of his own, as Hinata's juices sprayed from her snatch, bathing his length in her honey, and he poured shot after shot into her womb, and collapsed on top of her, blindly gumming for one of Hinata's erect nipples. Curling his tongue around one, he drew it in, sousing like a baby, though no milk flowed. Hinata writhed under him, sending waves of pleasure through him, making him harden once more. Slowly, he began pumping his hips, writhing into her once more. Ha, 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 en Naru-kun, Hinata moaned, more. Keep going, fill me with more of your lust. Naruto kept slamming into Hinata, over and over, using his insane stamina to send her spiraling, with mini-orgasm after mini-orgasm launching her into the heights of pleasure. As he approached his limits, his thrusts became faster, harder, and deeper, burying himself up to the hilt in Hinata's sopping pus. With a final plunge, he bellowed, "Uzumaki barrage," and fired shot after shot of his hot, sticky, chakra-filled semen into the already overflowing uterus of the Hyuga girl beneath him. "Come with me, Hinata," he howled, and her master's order given, Hinata Hyuga exploded, driving a stream of her steaming, warm, clear girlcum arcing across the room, slowing to a trickle as she crumpled onto her side, and falling asleep at once. Naruto laid at her side, stroking her hair, a tender look on his face. "Sleep well, Nata-chan," as he joined her in the warm dark of slumber. "Come with me, Hinata," he howled, and her master's order given, Hinata Hyuga exploded, driving a stream of her steaming, warm, clear girlcum arcing across the room, slowing to a trickle as she crumpled onto her side, and falling asleep at once. Naruto laid at her side, stroking her hair, a tender look on his face. "Sleep well, Nata-chan," as he joined her in the warm dark of slumber. Naruto was too out of it to notice, but, as the two slept, a stream of white smoke, thin and formless, drifted from Hinata's open mouth, floating in the air above her, then drifting over to her master. His slow breaths drew the smoke into his lungs, and it passed into his chakra system, and found its way to the seal on his stomach. Slowly, the seal glowed, and the smoke was absorbed into it, and the seal changed, almost unnoticeably, to start the process of unlocking a bloodline limit that even Kurama knew nothing about. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Yawned Naruto, stretching in a leisurely manner, before he rolled over and rubbed his cheek against his pillow. Frowning, he opened his eyes. My pillow doesn't moan, and it doesn't have a fold line in it, he thought before he grinned lecherously. He hadn't sunk into his pillow, but into Hinata's pillows, instead. Hinata mewled cutely as he kept pressing his face into her large mounds, before she opened her eyes and, eep. Na Naruto-sama, she squeaked. Why am I knack? And, why are you knack? Naruto gulped nervously. Well, Hinata-chan, he began, you swore an oath to me as your master, offering me your loyalty, love and obedience, and I accepted. You are now my girlfriend, I think. I'm not sure of the right words for what we have now, but, we're together, in any case. Hinata gasped as memories flashed through her mind. Hinata, cleaning Naruto's kitchen. Hinata, swearing the bond oath with Naruto. Hinata, doing that, with Naruto. Eep. She squeaked again, but somehow avoided fainting. As she mentally struggled with her new role in life, Naruto strolled out into the kitchen, and started pulling various food items from his now well-stocked cupboards. Exclamations of, huh, and, air, filled the small apartment, as Naruto tried to figure out what the things were, whether they were even edible, and if so, how to cook them. Hinata rose from the bed she'd shared with the foxy young man. Dressed, and followed after him, only to fall on her luscious butt, lolzing her head off at the sight of Naruto, wearing a colander on his head, about half a roll of cling film around one leg, his other foot in a bucket which had somehow been filled with milk, 3 eggs smeared over his chest, spaghetti shards sticking out of the holes in the colander, and about half a kilo of plain flour over his face, neck and, well, the rest of his body. Hinata-chan, he started, looking sheepishly at her, before holding up a courgette. What is this thing? XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. When Hinata had pulled herself together enough to only chuckle at the sight, rather than laugh like she was about to die of the funnies, helped the poor boy into the shower, while she cleaned up the mess and made breakfast, humming cheerfully to herself the whole time. Naruto wanted her, and she was more than happy to be his lil slavey girl. Once the meal she'd cooked was on the table, Hinata activated her Byakugan to see if Naruto was ready to eat, and blushed crimson as she caught an image of him pulling a fresh pair of boxers up his legs, and hiding his manhood, but not before she'd gotten a good eyeful of it. As he strolled into the kitchen, now free from his disastrous attempt at making something other than instant ramen, he smelled something good. When he entered the kitchen again, he saw a breakfast that looked like something out of a dream: miso soup, rice, rolled omelets, pickled eel, and a pot of freshly brewed green tea. Hinata-chan, he said. Yes, Naruto-sama, she replied, bowing to him. Did you make all this? Hi, Naruto-sama. Is it not to your liking? Naruto sat at the table, breathed deeply, and then grabbed a bowl and some chopsticks. Filling the dish with miso soup, he picked up a spoon and slurped up a great mouthful, then froze. Hinata watched in nervous anticipation as her lover swallowed, then, she heaved a sigh of relief as he smiled, shouted, "Itadakimasu," and started wolfing down everything he could reach, until, Hinata-chan. Come and eat with me. Naruto offered. Oh, no, Naruto-sama, I couldn't. I am but a lowly slave, who does not deserve to eat at your table, and you are my, Hinata, I am your master, and I am ordering you to eat with me. Smiling happily, Hinata sat at his side and began eating, purring as Naruto rubbed her back gently. After breakfast, Naruto planned out his day. First, he would go and see Sarutobi, the venerable third Hokage, to explain that he had somehow contacted the Kyuubi, and that she had caused an incident, and that he now had a permanent and loyal kunoichi slave. Second, he would ask to be placed in a different team, so that he could keep an eye on Hinata, and prevent her from being ridiculed or bullied. Third, he would see if there were any books in Konoha's libraries that held any information on Kurama, her abilities, and her level of control over him. With a plan of action firmly established, he called for Hinata, and the two left his apartment, heading for the Hokage's tower, and hopefully a solution to all this madness. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Unfortunately, it was not as peaceful as he hoped. As the duo entered a side alley that formed part of a shortcut to the tower, a loud, shrill, and extremely irritating voice drilled into them. Naruto, what are you doing? Naruto shuddered. He knew that voice, all too well. Anyo, Sakura-chan, he turned, to see the pink-haired banshee glaring at him, hands on hips. He started backing away as she stalked towards him. Then, moomsh, Sakura's eyes widened in shock, before her face darkened into something demonic. Naruto. Naruto risked one look over his shoulder, to find he had backed into Hinata, and his elbow had poked her in the boo. Oh, he never finished that thought, as Sakura charged at him, her pervert pounding fist up and primed. Oh, boy, this is gonna hurt, he muttered, when a pale blur breezed past him and took a defensive stance in front of him. Sakura was too far gone to see Hinata standing in her path, or maybe she simply didn't care. She kept coming, barreling towards her prey like a vengeful god. Unfortunately for Sakura, she was physically strong, but spent most of her time primping so she could look good for Sasuke-kun, whereas Hinata was a Hyuga, and a skilled practitioner of the gentle fist style of taijutsu. Hinata activated her Byakugan, and, without a moment's hesitation, began launching precise, painful strikes into Sakura's tenketsu, stripping her of her chakra and paralyzing her, before forcing Sakura down of her front before Naruto. Hinata then knelt on Sakura's back, fist co-ed back to deliver another strike, but Naruto had different ideas. Hinata, stop, he said, almost casually. Hinata's clenched fist halted, less than an inch from the back of Sakura's head, pulling back from a Jiyuken strike that would certainly have killed her. Standing up, Hinata bowed in submission, murmuring, "Hi, Naruto-sama." Sakura lay there, unable to believe it. Hinata, defending that baka pervert, why? Naruto beckoned, and Hinata skipped over to join him, and they started walking down the alley again, leaving Sakura lying in the dirt, looking very pissed off. Hey, let me up. Undo this thing, damn it. She raged, but Hinata only called back, no, I don't think I will. You attacked Naruto-sama, without provocation, so I punished you. It'll wear off in, I don't know, about 3 hours. Ignoring the howling bitch behind them, Naruto led his Hyuga champion onward, to meet the Hokage. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat at his huge desk, his lined face growing more and more serious with each word Naruto spoke. Finally, after Naruto had finished telling him how Hinata had beaten Sakura in his defense, the Hokage looked about ready to keel over. He pondered Naruto's words, before evidently deciding something. He placed his hands in the tiger symbol, and then flashed through a series of hand signs that was difficult to follow. Mitsuden no Jutsu, the Hokage shouted, slamming the palms of his hands on the desk. Immediately, a sound like a hug metal door slamming echoed through the room, indicating the technique's success. Naruto, I've placed a privacy seal over this room, because I have something to tell you, Sarutobi proclaimed. Now, Hinata, would you please leave? I need Naruto to hear this in private. To his shock, the girl adamantly refused to move. No, Hokage-san, I cannot do that without a direct order from my master. The third looked to Naruto, who asked, would it be okay if Hinata-chan heard this too, Ji-san? I would like her to stay. Sarutobi shook his head in amusement. Very well. Hinata, you may stay and listen then. The third stood up, and spread his arms. He always did have a flair for the dramatic. Naruto, you of course know the story of how the fourth Hokage saved Konoha by destroying the nine-tailed fox, but died in doing so. That is a lie. The truth is, the demon was too powerful, so he sealed it in the body of a newborn baby, you, Naruto. His name was Minato Namikaze. He was married to a lovely young lady called Kushina Uzumaki. They had one child, a son. This makes you their only descendant, Naruto. As such, your full name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. You are also entitled to the mansion of the Namikaze clan, and the deeds, accounts, and accoutrements that go with it. The Hokage stood up, and reached across the table, and shook Naruto's limp hand. Congratulations, Naruto. You are now an exceedingly wealthy young man. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Naruto stood in the garden of his new home, the Namikaze clan compound. Staring around him at the place he could now call his own, Hinata at his side, holding his arm tightly. All this time, and I never knew that I had this, and now, I have someone to share it with, he murmured, and Hinata squeezed him a little more. They shared a loving kiss, while the Hokage looked away, muttering, "Get a room, you two." Naruto heard, broke the kiss, and smirked. Jealous, old man. The Hokage grinned back, at the youngster, and ruffled his hair. Not in the slightest. I'm just happy you've found someone special to you. Sarutobi nodded. Also, I have another gift for you. He clicked his fingers, and a shadowy figure dropped from a nearby plum tree, landing in a crouch at the third's feet. This is Hubby, one of the Anbu Corps, and now your guardian and bodyguard. She will guard your property, you, and anyone who comes to live here. Although, if you fill this place up a bit, I'll have to see about giving you a few more as well. Hubby bowed to Naruto, before reaching up, pulling off the snake-patterned mask, and grinning. Hey, Gaki. Naruto's eyes widened, his face lit up, and he hugged the Anbu operative. Anko Ne-chan. Woohoo. Naruto held Anko close, looking up about an inch into her indigo eyes. Heias, Ne-chan. He grinned, and Anko smiled, genuinely pleased to see the blonde ball of energy, and hugged him tighter. Hey yourself, kiddo. And wow, you've grown one, soon you'll be taller than me, she said with a fake sad face, before giggling as Naruto tickled her under her ribcage. It was one of her few weaknesses, but Anko was extremely ticklish in a certain spot under her ribs, and Naruto knew exactly where to wiggle his fingers. Street stop that, Naru-chan, the Tokubetsu Jonin felt as Naruto tickled without mercy. Haha, nope, he smirked. Then Hinata, who'd been looking on jealously, fell upon Naruto and started worming her fingers into his sides, making him forget Anko's torture and start rolling around on the lawn, kicking and yelling playfully, as Hinata kept up the punishment. After 20 minutes of petting Naruto, Hinata felt that she'd established her place as Naruto's alpha slave, so she let him up, and grinned triumphantly at the purple-haired girl. Anko stuck her tongue out at her. Naruto caught his breath, and then asked, Anko Ne, can you show us where the kitchen is? You'll need to be sitting down for what I have to tell you. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. You did what? Anko shrieked loudly enough to break one of the sound seals put up by the third before he left. As the jutsu unraveled, Anko slumped in her chair, heart breaking inside. Damn, I should have made my move during the Chunin exams. Now he's the master of that little Hyuga princess, and I'm completely out of the picture. Steeling herself, she took a deep breath, and then asked, so, how many slaves do you plan on keeping, Naruto? Naruto's face fell into a contemplative mood, and he said, I really have no idea, but I hope at least a few, maybe 3 or 4. Anko nodded, then stood and stretched, pushing out her chest noticeably. If I can't win Naruto's heart, I can damn well show him what he's missing, she thought, noting with satisfaction that his eyes were glued to her assets. As she turned and started rummaging through cupboards, she felt eyes on her as she pulled a wok from a shelf, she turned to the wood-burning stove and made a tiger hand sign. Fire style. Fire spit jutsu. Anko called, then hawked a flaming loogie straight into the stove, lighting the stove neatly. As the flames rose, she poured oil into the pan and diced chicken fillets, then slid them into the pan with crushed garlic and ginger, and kept the heat on while a shadow clone sliced carrots, peppers, mushrooms, courgettes and a second clone heated water for noodles with a fire breath jutsu. As the chicken and vegetables flash fried, Anko focused her chakra to her feet and speed boosted round the room, setting 3 places at the table, then draining the noodles the moment they were done. She tossed them lightly in soy sauce, and then placed the bowl on the table, pulling the stir-fry from the heat, and laying it on a mat so as not to burn the wood. Well, dig in, Anko offered, and the 2 hungry teens filled their plates, and with a chorus of, "Itadakimasu." The 3 set to work demolishing the good food. Sitting back, Naruto picked his teeth, and stood up, carrying his plate. "What are you doing, Naruto-sama?" Hinata asked. Tidying up," the confused blonde answered. She shook her head. "No, as your slave, the cleaning is my privilege, so, please, sit and relax." Anko snickered at Hinata's use of sama, and Naruto blinked owlishly at her. "What's so funny, Anko ne?" He yawned. Anko's heart swelled as he made the cutest little sleepy noise, and she scooped him up and carried him on her back to the master bedroom, gently laying him on the 4-poster, then lying down and curling up next to him, spooning his back, leaving his chest for Hinata. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. A few hours later, Anko awoke, to find Naruto smiling at her. "Sleep well, Anko ne?" he purred. She stretched, and yawned. "Oh, yeah, this bed is great, I could sleep here forever." Naruto's eyes glinted. "Oh, really? It seems that you have designs on my bed, Ne-chan. Well, seeing as I have an offer for you, you might soon be spending a lot more time in it." "What do you mean?" Anko asked, nervous anticipation flooding through her body. Naruto's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Will you join my harem as one of my girlfriends, Anko-chan? I promise I'll treat you good, and you won't have to worry about going on missions to support us. After all, I am the son of the 4th Hokage, and you were released into my service. I believe that gives me the option to grant permission to allow you to take assignments. So, Wadea say." Anko's eyes widened, and she started crying. She threw her arms around Naruto's neck, and the blonde ninja had only one thought in his head: stop Anko crying. He gently shook her off, stood up, and strode to the staircase, calling out, "Follow me, if you wish to be one of my clan." And Anko stood, and, as if in a trance, she moved after the boy like the wake of a boat. He led her down the stairs, and instead of turning right, which would have taken the pair to the kitchen, he headed left, and along a sloping passage, took another left turn, and stopped. Anko caught up, and saw why he'd come to a halt. The passage terminated in a dead end. She turned to go back, but Naruto clasped his hands in the ram seal, and channeled a drop of chakra. Kai. Anko stared in amazement as the wall at the end of the corridor grated, shook, and slid seamlessly into the floor, leaving a hidden way open to them. Following the hall, Naruto seemed distant, as if he was concentrating hard. After a short walk, the passage met a large, natural cavern with a perfectly smooth stone floor. Naruto strode into the center of the chamber, raised his hand, and held it, palm down, parallel to the ground. Again, his chakra flared, and a summoning circle from a time before scrolls appeared in glowing white light. Naruto's eyes were also glowing with ancient power. When he spoke, the chamber echoed. "Anko, come here." Anko stepped forward, joy singing in her heart. She entered the circle, then knelt in front of Naruto. Speak your blood oath to me, and let two become one. Anko opened her mouth, but then, she heard words pouring from her mouth. They were not the words she'd meant to use. We are bound, through will of fire. My choice to serve, my one desire. We are bound, through wind's cool touch. I live to be the one you clutch. We are bound, through strength of soil. I work for you, in love I toil. We are bound, through flowing streams. To you, my lord, I give my dreams. We are bound, in blood and steel. To you I bow, to you I kneel. We are bound by lightning shock. Your heart, the key. My heart, the lock. Naruto stared impassively at Anko, and then smiled. Anko Mitarashi, the snake bitch. No longer shall you be known as such. From this day forth, you are Anko Namikaze Uzumaki, the Foxfire Girl. He flexed his palm, and 2 cups of sake materialized. Picking one up, he drank it, while Anko copied him. When the cups were drained, they vanished. Naruto raised his right arm, and bold black lines began weaving themselves around his forearm. He reached out and laid his palm on Anko's seal. His face took on an animalistic quality, and his teeth grew longer and sharper, the whisker marks on his cheeks thickening. Be gone, cursed seal that binds my love. He bellowed, and the seal started screaming, as if in horrendous pain. Anko felt the psych shock of Orochimaru's failed sigil break into shards, and knew, for the first time in a long time, that she was finally free of his influence. With a faint sigh, she collapsed sideways, into Naruto's waiting arms, and welcomed the darkness. Yua, sitting up, Anko winced as pain lanced through her shoulder, then faded. She looked around, and noted that she was now back in the bed she'd shared with Naruto, and the blonde himself was dozing in a chair nearby, looking rumpled and dirty. She stretched her leg out and poked him in the side, smiling as he twitched, then he woke. Wah! Anko nay. You woke up. Oh, phew. Anko started at his delighted whooping, and then asked, Sue, how long was I out? About 3 days, Naruto said. We had to get the Hokage in to check on you, but it was just chakra exhaustion, so you should be fine, once you've had something to eat. Anko nodded, then swiveled her legs, sitting on the side of the bed, then stood. Mildly surprised, she watched as a trickle of blood ran down Naruto's lip, and then he wiped it away. Looking down, Anko Mita no Namikaze Uzumaki was as knack as the day she was born. Her long, smooth legs were firm and silky. Her tanned skin was clear of any blemishes, and glowed with good health. Rounded hips and a tight, pert butt that swayed when she took a step. A flat, toned belly and slim shoulders. Slender, strong arms with dainty hands. Pianist's fingers. Firm, round bras that did not sag, tipped with centimeter radius areolae, centered with dusky pink nipples that could make a baby scream for its mama. Anko's blue-black hair was wildly spiked, and her hazel eyes were sleepy, but they widened as she saw her body. Naru-kun, she purred. Why yes, Anko nay. The Jinchuriki gulped. Why am I knack, young man? She murmured. Be because why you needed to sleep, and that mesh bee body glove wasn't suitable. Naruto stuttered. I was gonna get some night clothes, but I've been sleeping a lot. Doing that blood oath used most of my chakra, as well as all of yours. I then used even more of my reserves to remove Orochimaru's cursed seal of heaven. Anko froze. So, you truly did destroy that scaly bastard's hold on me, that means more to me than I can ever repay. Naruto grinned as Anko's lips curved into a genuine smile, one of the few she's ever made. Anko reached out, and gently seized Naruto's wrist, pulling him off his chair and into her lap, where she nuzzled her head into his shoulder, and then, looking up at him, she leaned forward and kissed him on the mouth. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. La. End scene here. Naruto responded willingly, and Anko began using her tongue to stroke over his, exploring every millimeter of his mouth, her hands balled into fists and rested on her paramour's broad chest. Naruto slowly reached up and placed his hands on her shoulders, but she stopped kissing long enough to gasp, "Touch me, Naruto," before suctioning onto his face again. Naruto drew his hands slowly down Anko's chest, until he finally laid both palms directly on Anko's sensitive bras. She mewed with pleasure, and then squeaked when his fingers tightened on a nipple. Anko slowly reached her left hand down to Naruto's trousers, and flinched. "Wow, I didn't expect you to be so manly, Naru-kun," she said, and then grinned. Naruto kissed her again, and then started sousing her collarbone, and then laid kisses along her shoulders, down onto her front, on her bras, and down further, over the stomach, and southward still. As Anko shivered in anticipation, Naruto finally reached the object of his search. The treasure hidden between Anko's thighs. Smirking at Anko's face, he began licking the inside of her thighs, though never straying nearer than an inch towards her womanhood. Anko was in heaven. First the cursed seal was gone, and now, the young man she loved like more than a brother was teasing her so good. She was being rapturously tortured, and she loved it. "Naruto, lick my puss, lick my puss." She pleaded with him, but he ignored her, still kissing and licking her, but not where she wanted his tongue. "Please," she wailed, and Naruto dived in, his tongue sliding between her labia and in. Anko threw back her head and screamed. She hadn't been touched in years, and now the feeling she'd longed for was hers again. Naruto wriggled inside her, and slowly began curling and flexing that wonderful muscle, buried up to the root in Anko's tight snatch. He instinctively reached out and tweaked her clit, sending another crashing wave of bliss rolling through Anko. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Kurama sat on the floor, watching as Naruto ate his latest girl like a bowl of miso ramen. Her sei was dripping, so she thrust two of her fingers down inside her and began curling them, hunting for her G-spot, the one thing short of actual sei that would guarantee an orgasm. The white smoke that Hinata had given off after she'd fusidi Naruto was a unique kind of chakra, which only Naruto could absorb. It granted him the bloodline technique known as the Yorokobi no Kiro, the pathways of pleasure jutsu. It would allow him to instinctively understand what got each girl he slept with hot, and how to bring them to the brink. "Naruto," she sighed, and the mere mention of her blonde host brought a rush of sweet honey pouring forth. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Real world. How are you so god? Anko gasped, before shrieking in pleasure again. Naruto had slid two fingers inside her, and was now sucking her lit like it was a nipple, while he pumped her. With his free hand, he was gently kneading and toying her bras. Her nipples ached and throbbed, releasing a trickle of milk. Anko had had a part-time job in a nursery when she was 17, and she'd been required to stimulate lactation. She'd kept the process up, through sheer habit. And now, it was hurting her, but it felt so good. Naruto's new bloodline activated, and he pulled his lips from Anko's pearl, slithering his lean body up hers and latched onto one of her swollen, milk-leaking tits, and suckled like a baby. Anko howled as she climaxed, and soaked the sheets below her waist. Naruto panted, "You're already done. Awa, I was hoping to get a chance to pound that tight puss of yours, Nei-chan." Anko grabbed him by the shoulder and snarled, "Who said I was done? Let's do this, oh, Kami." She broke off as Naruto slipped his finger into her butt, and started moving it. "Oh Kami, that feels great." Anko yelped and came again. Naruto lined himself up with Anko's help, and then eased himself into her warm, wet cavern. "Anko-chan, you're so tight." Naruto groaned as he started moving, while Anko just lay there, a fusidi stupid expression on her face. So good, she thought, as she lay there, getting the love she always wanted. Anko just lay there, letting Naruto move. She swore that she could hear music. As he pumped, she could feel a spring in her core winding tighter and tighter, drawing closer to her limit. Oh, Naru-kun. Oh, oh, so good. Anko screamed, wrapping her legs around her master and lover, holding him close as he released his essence into her fertile womb. As she unclenched, he rolled free and lay at her side, panting. That was amazing, Anko Heim, Naruto gasped, chest heaving from his exertions. Anko could only nod in agreement. As the pair lay there, a strand of white smoke, the same as last time, poured in a thin trickle from Anko's mouth. Naruto started when he saw it. Anko-chan, are you on fire? He asked. Anko opened her eyes and squealed when she saw the cloud. Their eyes tracked it as it drifted over to Naruto and was soused into his open jaw, disappearing as silently as it had appeared. What the hell was that? They both exclaimed. Anko's eyes met her love's, and he said, "We need to talk to the Hokage." XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. So you're telling me that, after you'd finished putting Percy in the playpen, hiding the pork sword, doing the horizontal tango, Anko emitted some white vapor, and Naruto drew it in. The third Hokage looked at the squirming pair, now both bright red. I love embarrassing my adopted grandson, he thought to himself. He assumed his classic, thinking pose, and waited for a minute to let the information sink in. There is only one thing I can think of that might explain such a phenomenon, Sarutobi muttered finally. What? What? The nervous pair yelled. Naruto, I have reason to believe that you have a bloodline limit. The third said with certainty. It is an extremely rare and powerful ability, called the Tsuki Kei's no Kanzai, or the white mist of control. It will allow you to control people's minds, making them agree to things they would normally not, or convincing them that you did not do something. This is all I know of such an unusual Kekkei Genkei, Genin Uzumaki Namikaze, and I will take time to research it. For now, do not mention this to anyone. I am classifying it as an S-rank secret. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Naruto. Hinata called, as she hadn't seen either her master or Anko anywhere. The last she'd seen of them was when those two had gone to bed. Hinata had masturbated furiously to the screams and moans from her master's room. She shook her head rapidly. Now was not the time to get caught up in fantasy. She had to find him. As she hurried down the main stairs, she saw the front door open, and Anko came in, supporting a limp Naruto. Quote! She screamed, and ran to his side. Hina-chan, he sighed, I need some time to myself, would you let me be for an hour or two? I have a lot to think about. She had agreed, and Naruto had disappeared out of the back door and away. He was still nearby, but his exact location was hard to discern. 4 hours and 15 minutes later, Anko and Hinata were walking through the extensive gardens, seemingly peaceful, but worry seethed in their hearts. They hadn't seen or heard from Naruto since morning, and it was nearly sundown. As they rounded the corner, Anko spotted an orange-red light spilling from an open doorway, accompanied by the sound of metal on metal. Creeping over to the door, they peeked in, to see Naruto, shirtless and sweaty, pounding away at a bar of glowing metal with his fist. He lifted it from its resting place on an anvil, and then plunged it back into the fire, forming a swallow hand sign and causing a gust of wind to wash over the flames, heating the metal from its yellow shine to a white glow. He lifted it from the forge, clinked it down on the anvil again, raised his right hand, and coated it with chakra. He began slamming his knuckles into the slab of ore, shaping it into an object that would have Tenten Higurashi, the weapons mistress of Konoha, drooling. Naruto was forging a sword, with nothing but fire and fist. A small pile of already finished weapons lay in a heap on his workbench, shining like ice. As he doused the blade in a stream of water he spat from his mouth, the gleam of heat died, leaving a sword blade that shimmered like ripples of water in the sunlight. Naruto's lips twitched in a faint smile, and he moved to a pile of wood and leather scraps. He selected a short piece of dark brown wood, and bored into it with a tiny rasengan, creating a thin tunnel, which he slid the tang of the blade into. With his hands, he sealed the blade into the handle, before using strips of different colored leather to bind the handle. Red, yellow, blue, green, orange, over and over, Naruto plaited the strips into a grip that was as magnificent as the rest of the piece. He laid it on the pile of completed swords, and then started categorizing them. Swords went on the racks on the left-hand wall, daggers and knives went into display cases along the right wall. Finally, there were only 2 pieces of weaponry lying on the bench. The one that Anko and Hinata had seen made, and another, hidden under a cloth. Naruto heaved a sigh, then started heading back to the forge. "You'd better come in, or you'll stand there all night," he called. Shocked that he'd noticed them, the 2 stepped gingerly into Naruto's forge room, and folded their hands in front of them. Naruto smiled at them gently. "Well, you found me," he commented, and then beckoned Hinata to him. She stepped up, and he picked up the sword he'd been making when they'd seen him first. "This is the Akahime no Konoha, the Red Princess of the Leaf. She is yours, and will come to you when you call. She is a fine sword, and will adjust to you over time." Handing Hinata a matching leathern saya, he picked up the item on the bench, covered in a white cloth. Striding over to Anko, he handed to her in the formal offering, 2 hands holding it out. When she took it, the fabric fell away to reveal a sword forged from black metal, which soused all other light in. The edge was slightly curved, but still resembled Hinata's, except for the blade, which was a wave-edged blade, rippled like the sea. "This is the Kurohime no Konoha, the Black Princess of the Leaf. She is yours, and will come to you when you call. This is a sword unlike any other, for if you channel a little chakra," he nodded to Anko, "the blade will change to match your skills." As Anko channeled a drop of her chakra into the hilt, the blade turned into a snake, made of silver metal with rubies for eyes. Hinata copied Anko, and the blade changed to resemble a Chinese dragon, forged from living gold, with diamonds for the eyes. As the pair gasped with shock and delight at their gifts, Naruto hugged them both and whispered, "These swords are unique, and cannot be replicated. I forged them from orichalcum, the steel of the kami, which is nigh on indestructible. Watch." He picked up a poker and swung it viciously at Anko, who blocked instinctively. When they collided, the poker was cut in 2, leaving the sword unharmed, not even a scratch. Dropping the poker end, he bowed to them. "These are gifts, to thank you and honor you for your acceptance of me." The 2 girls glomped him, and he fell over, landing in a barrel of water, surfacing with his hair draped over his eyes, before bursting into peals of laughter. Naruto fished himself out of the water but, "Okay, girls," he yawned, "it's been a long day, and I'm knackered. Shall we go to bed together?" Nodding, Anko and Hinata latched on to an arm each, and dragged him up to the master bedroom, before changing. Hinata was wearing a sheer nightgown of peach silk, and Anko wore nothing, as usual. Naruto's eyes widened, and he spread his arms out to either side, and the 2 women curled up beside their loving master boyfriend. "This is just nice," Naruto mused sleepily, before his eyelids closed, and the trio drifted off, exhausted by their busy day. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO person, but even he could sense something was amiss. Mornin' Anko-chan, he mumbled. Mornin', not a chan, mornin' Kurama-chan, wait, Kurama-chan. The three girls shot upright as he shouted, and the 9 fox-tailed, furry-eared redhead fell off the end of the bed, squeaking in shock. Hey, that scared me. She whined, before freezing. Naru-kun, why are you in the mindscape this early? Naruto blinked. I'm not, he said lamely. Kurama squealed, and the alarm clock shattered. I'm out here. And you're out here. So that means, you and me, we can be together. Kurama babbled at high speed, and then threw herself onto Naruto and squeezed him tight, twisting her tails together and draping them all over the bed. Naruto hugged her back, laughing happily. Guys, this is Kurama-chan, she's my friend, and I hope you'll be friends with her too. He shouted. Anko and Hinata sweat dropped at the blonde ninja's antics, before staring at their new guest. Nine tails, Anko tailed off, looking shell-shocked. Fox ears, added Hinata. Naruto. Get away, she's dangerous. They yelled, drawing kunai from nowhere. Nata-chan, Anko-chan, put those kunai away. Naruto lunged between the two girls, standing between them and a cowering Kurama, flinging his arms out to the sides, but too late. The kunai were already in motion, and they hit the young genin. Hinata's kunai plunged into his left thigh, Anko's pierced his right lung. Naruto. Kurama screamed, and lunged to catch him before he hit the ground. Anko and Hinata froze, staring at the damage they'd inflicted on the poor boy in front of them, now cradled in the arms of the yokai fox, who eased the knives from their wounds, laid them on the bead, then held her palms out, and poured healing chakra into the injured Naruto, sealing the wounds, fixing the torn muscle and tissue, repairing the skin, until no trace of pain was left. Naruto heaved a deep breath, and sat up, before being flattened by Kurama again. Oh, Naru-kun, you're alright. She sobbed, and then let go, wiping her eyes with her forearm. Naruto slid off the bed, and stepped close to Anko. Crack. He slapped her across the cheek, hard. Crack. Hinata received the same treatment, and they sat down, blinking away tears and rubbing their stinging cheeks. Naruto-sama. Hinata stammered, eyes glistening ad dewy. Anko just stared reproachfully at him, and his glare softened. I'm sorry, you too, but I need you to listen to me, and trust my judgment. Kurama is the nine-tailed fox, but she told me that it was Madara Uchiha who controlled her, causing the rampage through Konoha all those years ago. The fourth Hokage could not destroy her, so he sealed her inside me, and that's why I got so much flack from the villagers. Hinata started weeping in sorrow for what she'd done, and Anko bowed low. Naruto-sama, if you so wish, I shall collect my belongings and report to the Hokage to terminate our contract, the Tokubetsu Jonin started to say, before she was cut off by Naruto's lips, and he kissed her with passion, until she relaxed and started to return the sign of affection. Does that answer your question, Anko-chan? He grinned, then kissed Hinata so hard, the blush raging across her cheeks could melt a stone. Now, apologize to Kurama-chan, and then let's have breakfast. Naruto smiled, and stepped out to use the bathroom. Once in there, he left the door open, so he could hear what was being said in his bedroom. I'm sorry, Kurama-chan, but I was told that you were evil, so I attacked without thinking. Can you ever forgive me? Came Anko's voice, loud and clear. Of course, you were protecting Naru-kun, and I would do the same in your shoes. It's okay, but next time, be careful where you throw those things. That was Kurama-chan, he figured, and smiled at the thought of what the four of them could do. Oh, I'm very sorry, Kurama-san, but, Naruto-kun, he was injured, and you healed him. That doesn't seem like an evil demon thing to do, Hinata tentatively inquired. Please, Hinata-chan, call me Kurama-chan, I'm one of Naruto's girls too, you know, so we should try to get on well, for his sake, Anko and Hinata's voices chorused, okay. And Naruto stepped out, a towel wrapped around his waist. He kissed all three girls, and they quickly dressed. Hinata was wearing her usual, as was Anko. Kurama borrowed a short lilac sundress from the wardrobe. It had belonged to Kushina, but Naruto had given the girls free rein to choose clothes from there, as long as they took good care with them. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOX. Time skip. 3 hours. Naruto was strolling through the main street, smiling to himself. He'd taken the chance to go for a walk, and promised to be back for lunch. After grabbing Gamma-chan, his wallet, he'd stepped out to do a little shopping. He'd been forging a lot last night, so he needed to replenish his stock of ores, leather strips, and anthracite. Noticing a shop with a sword hanging above the door, he ducked through the curtains and stared in wonder at the sight of a well-maintained, spotless room filled wall to wall with weapons of every imaginable kind. Swords, knives, double blades, pole arms, and other things that Naruto couldn't even recognize filled racks, display cases, and shelves. Turning in a slow 360, and yelled, "Yar RGGHH. He'd come face to face with a frightening suit of samurai armor, and had jumped badly. Hearing the commotion, a young girl with brown hair, tied in two panda ear-like buns came through a door that had escaped his notice. "Hi, welcome to the Sword of Damocles, can I help you?" Naruto stopped hopping about, and turned, before grinning from ear to ear. "Tenten, how are ya? What are you doing here? Are you buying something too?" Tenten smiled shyly. "No, I own this shop. My dad bought a second property a while ago, but couldn't hire anyone to run it. I volunteered, and he gave me the store." Naruto's eyes bugged out of his skull, and he yelled, "That is so awesome." "Oh, yeah, I could use your help, Higurashi-san." Tenten laughed. "Oh, please. I haven't been called by my surname in forever, just Tenten, thanks. Now, what do you need?" Naruto pulled a list out of his pocket, and consulted it briefly. I need leather strips, in various colors, 8 kilos. Mahogany or other similar hardwood, 4 kilos, shaped like a cylinder, cut into 10-inch pieces. Anthracite, fine grade, half a ton, and as much orichalcum as you've got, please." Tenten's jaw dropped. Was she hearing what she thought she was hearing? All that. What are you doing with all of that?" "Forging weapons," Naruto replied casually. "I moved into my own estate the other day, and I found a fully equipped forge, and discovered a talent for the art of metal work." He reached into a pocket. "Oh, while I'm here, would you mind appraising one of my pieces? I made this yesterday, and I wondered what you think. After all, you are Konoha's mistress of all things sharp and pointy." Tenten agreed, and Naruto pulled out a storage scroll. He opened it and retrieved a cloth-wrapped bundle, which he handed to her. When she unwrapped it, Tenten had something similar to both a heart attack and an orgasm. In her hands was the most beautiful sword she'd ever seen. It was a broadsword, with a perfectly straight blade, forged from orichalcum, with a handle of teak and rosewood. The grip was carefully wrought from a single piece of electrum, and gems were inlaid in the hilt and sheath. The pommel stone was a single black stone, cut into an oval. A black diamond. Tenten's mind went blank. She had made a bet with her father. If she met someone who was better at forging than she was, she would date him. In a shaking voice, Tenten asked, How long did it take to make this?" Naruto though briefly, then answered, "Oh, about an hour." "Say, want to keep it? It's your if you do." Tenten almost fainted. A sword like this was worth well over 200 million ryo, and he was offering it to her as if it was a slice of cake. She laid it down on the counter, and drew a shaking breath. "Naruto-san?" she asked tentatively. "Hi, Tenten-chan," the blonde replied, cocking his head on one side. Will you go out with me? I promise I'll be a good girlfriend, and now I know how skilled you are at forging, there's no other man I want in my life. Please, say you'll be my boyfriend." Tenten knelt in front of the blonde, and clasped her hands, as if in supplication. Tears of hope and fear of rejection shone in her hazel eyes, and she shook with nerves as she waited for his answer. Naruto pursed his lips and folded his arms. "I have one question for you," he said. Tenten looked at him, and nodded. "Do you have any problems in sharing me? I already have 3 girlfriends, you see, and I want more. Are you willing to be one of my girls, Tenten-chan?" Tenten stood, and launched herself at the young man before her, kissing him over and over again. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. she murmured between kisses. Laughing, Naruto wrapped his arms around her waist and spun around, until they were both dizzy and gasping for breath. Staring into her eyes, Naruto whispered, "I love you, Ten-chan," and their lips connected, so gently, but inside, Tenten's heart was soaring. She had found her place, and it was in Naruto's arms, and she was more than happy to stay there. Naruto had been busy during the last month. He'd had to spend his money a little more economically than he had previously. After all, he had Anko, Hinata, Kurama and Tenten living with him, so he'd been forced to lay off the ramen, but, with 4 girls more than willing to cook the most delicious food, he wasn't too upset with that. Besides, when Neji had turned up at the door looking for him, he was convinced the pessimistic boy was about to neuter him with the gentle fist, but Neji had instead issued a challenge. "I will be your opponent in the upcoming Chunin exams in 6 months, he monotoned, and I wish to make a wager with you. If I win, you will release Hinata-sama and never speak to her again. If you win, I shall train you in as much of the gentle fist as I can, and shall become your bodyguard. Do we have a deal?" Naruto had agreed, but kept quiet the fact that Hinata had already begun teaching him the art, and that his bloodline worked as well as the Byakugan did, with almost the same effect. Instead of seeing the Tenketsu, Naruto's bloodline allowed him to see the pleasure and pain points in the human body, and the gentle fist was perfect for activating them. Naruto smiled, and a trickle of blood ran out of his nose when he remembered the times he'd used the pleasure points to bring his girls to screaming orgasms, but Tenten had never joined them in bed. They made out, of course, and Naruto had often felt her up, but Tenten had said she just wasn't ready, but they could make love on her 17th birthday, which was the 9th of March, next year. As Naruto trained his bloodline in gentle fist, changing the style into a new taijutsu he called pressure fist, a pair of mysterious figures arrived at the gates of Konoha, rousing Izumo and Katetsu, the eternal Chunin, from their dozing. Toad Sage, the two said in unison, a particularly useless skill they'd spent hours practicing. They quickly stamped out 2 passes, and opened the leaf gate, ushering the 2 shrouded men inside. "Well, sensei, we're finally here," the shorter cloaked figure said to the larger. "Are the girls really as beautiful as you say? Now, Hensuke, has your master ever led you astray?" Hensuke pondered for a second, and then nodded. "Yup, all the time, boss. In fact, you still owe me that 60 ryo." Jiraiya winced at the memory, and then shook his head. "Enough of the pointless blathering. Let's get some research done. I need to get the next issue of Makeout Paradise on the market as soon as possible." The 2 mysterious shadows hurried down an alley, and disappeared. Elsewhere, Naruto woke with a feeling of foreboding. "I sense a strange chakra, strange and pervy. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO 2.5 months training his speed, until he could outstrip Neji in a flat race. The new taijutsu that he'd perfected had evolved into 3 sub-styles. The first, he named Ascension, and using his bloodline, his eyes turned a hot pink and glowed. He could then see the pleasure centers of the human body, and used the gentle fist to strike them precisely, charging his fingertips with chakra to inflict more pleasure. The opposite side of the technique was dubbed Cataclysm, and inflicted horrific pain on the target. Naruto's eyes shone a sickly yellow when he activated this style, and could even kill with a few well-placed blows to the ribs and stomach. The final and most deadly of the Unholy Trinity was known as the Overload, and took on the aspects of both previous sub-styles. Naruto's left hand and eye glowed pink, and his right hand and eye turned yellow. The power behind these strikes could utterly burn out the pleasure and pain centers and leave his opponent a charred wreck, incapable of even breathing on their own anymore. Naruto had sworn never to use the Overload fist on someone unless his life was in danger. The other 2 styles, however, were free to use at will. Naruto had asked Rock Lee for a little help with his gentle fist-like style, and Lee had willingly agreed, loudly proclaiming that, "Yush. The fires of youth burn brightly in your heart, Naruto-san." And after an intense 3-hour-long spar, the two had become firm friends. Naruto had invited Lee over, and had slapped a piece of paper on his shoulder when he arrived. "What's this paper you have stuck to me, my youthful friend?" Lee asked, and nearly fainted when Naruto told him, "It's a seal that will allow you to use your chakra, Lee. Consider it my thanks for earlier." Lee concentrated, and suddenly a blue light flared around his fists, and then brightened. "Yush, Naruto-san, I have finally begun my journey down the true path of the ninja." Lee yelled with delight, before hugging Naruto and dashing off to Shogai-sensei. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO Neji himself. The two met in the arena, and Gecko Hayate raised his hand. The match begun, and the ninja proctor leapt aside as the two young shinobi charged at each other, chakra flaring and swirling as they tried to outmatch the other. Naruto put his hands together, flashed through some signs, and yelled, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." 4 shadow clones popped into existence, and they all drew kunai before dashing straight at the bored-looking Hyuga. Neji blurred into motion, dispatching 2 of the clones in a single move. The other 2 clones pulled back, and then lunged again, flipping over Neji's head and landing behind him. The first clone slashed diagonally with the kunai, but Neji hopped over the blade and kicked the clone in the face, knocking it into the second clone and dispelling them both. Landing on the sandy arena floor, Neji bowed slightly. "A good tactic, but I was destined to defeat you. No one can change their fate, my young opponent." Naruto simply grinned, before creating 20 more shadow clones and sent the entire wave charging after the white-eyed teen. Neji leapt into the air, spinning like a top, and kicked 3 clones out of the fight. 2 more swiftly followed, and they poofed away. With a quarter of his clones gone, Naruto charged in himself, hanging back to keep out of Neji's range. Neji, on the other hand, had gentle fist style D another 6, using his Byakugan to destroy the grinning blonde pests. Finally growing bored with beating up clones, Neji sprinted straight at the original Naruto, striking him several times in quick succession, and the blonde sputtered up a string of blood. "Naruto!" Anko yelled, staring at her boyfriend in shock. Beside her, Tenten and Hinata were close to tears. Naruto," whimpered Hinata, and Tenten put her arms around the sniffling brunette. As they watched, Naruto fell to his knees, and popped like a smoke bomb. Neji started, blinking in surprise. "What?" A kunai whistled towards his head and he ducked. "How did you do that?" Naruto poked his tongue out. "Durable shadow clone jutsu. It reinforces them with a solid layer of chakra, dumbass." The infuriated Hyuga lunged at his tormentor, who dodged the first strike, flipped over the low kick, twisted out of the path of the third, and slammed both palms into Neji's gut, launching him a few feet. Twin palm heel strike, Uzumaki pressure fist style. Neji spat, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Byakugan. And the veins around his eyes swelled, activating his Kekkei Genkai. Naruto placed his hands, palms together, formed a hand sign that looked like his right index finger through a ring made of his left hand's thumb and forefinger, and shouted, "Yorotamigan." His eyes lit up hot pink, and his fingertips pulsed a pink chakra that confused Neji's eyes for a moment. Only a moment, but that was enough. Naruto shot forwards, striking pressure points on Neji's arms and shoulders with a style which, though different, was still distinctly a gentle fist-style taijutsu. With every blow that hit, Neji felt overwhelming euphoria. This shouldn't feel go OD, but I can't focus. "Naruto, what is this?" Naruto sniggered, and replied, 8 trigrams 64 palms, ascension style. His eyes changed color, from hot pink to rusty yellow. "Now, try this. 8 trigrams 64 palms, cataclysm style." He performed the same move again, but this time, Where there had been a fuzzy feeling of warmth, now all that Neji felt was excruciating pain. RRGGHH, Cammy, this hurts. He screamed, sinking to his knees. It felt like his soul had been torn out, fed into a mincer, and then doused in vinegar and acid before being fried. Hayate Gecko, the proctor, reappeared, checked Neji over, and then held up one hand. The winner of the fight between Neji Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki is Naruto. The crowd were stunned, but Anko, Hinata and Tenten were cheering, as was the third Hokage, Iruka-sensei, and the ramen pair, Ayame and Tsuki Ichiraku. Naruto helped Neji up, and hit a few more points, freeing him from the constant torture. Neji bowed, and said, I have lost. I will honor our bargain. Hinata-sama is your woman, and I am your humble servant. Naruto shook his head. No, you are not my humble anything. You are my new friend, and you fought well, Hyuga Neji. In fact, Hinata-chan started teaching me the gentle fist, and I shaped it to fit my pleasure pain my bloodline limit. Your Byakugan allows you to see my Tenketsu, whereas my Yorotamigan allows me to see the pleasure and pain receptors of the human body, and activate them with the gentle fist. From the stands, a pair of figures, the same ones from earlier, to be precise, watched the blonde with avid interest. He fights like the Hyuga, but is not a Hyuga himself. I may have to meet this boy soon, the white-haired man mused. I'll draw him out, then you can talk, Jiraiya-sensei, said Hensuke. Yes, you do that, young Kurakawa, and then we'll see what he really can do. As the dust cleared and the third Hokage stood, there was not a sound to be heard. He cleared his throat, and then made a few hand signs: ox, tiger, rat, and snake. His voice, magnified by the jutsu, echoed around the arena. That was an impressive battle, young genin. I must say that you both possess the will of fire in spades. But, due to unexpected circumstances, there can only be one outcome of this match: the new Chunin of the Leaf Village, Naruto Uzumaki, and Neji Hyuga. Neji, you earned your Chunin rank for knowing when to surrender, a trait that more people could learn to develop, and for understanding when you are hopelessly outmatched. I already knew Naruto was much stronger than many here give him credit for. And Naruto, you earned your Chunin rank by winning the match, yet causing no permanent damage, and proved to all your fighting spirit. You not only won the match, but bore no grudge, instead extending the hand of friendship. Congratulations, Chunin. Sarutobi clapped, and the sound rang, before Iruka, Anko, Hinata, Lee, Guy, Ayame, Tsuki, and Tenten burst into applause, whooping, cheering, and generally carrying on. The rest of the audience sat there shocked, but Naruto grabbed Neji's wrist and raised their clasped hands together, saluting their friends and family, and Neji smiled for the first time in years, a slow, genuine, happy smile, before shouting, "We did it, Naruto. We both made Chunin," and hugging the blonde affectionately. Naruto slapped his new friend on the back, and then the two high-fived, before bursting into howls of laughter. As the two came back onto the stands, they were mobbed by Naruto's girlfriends and supporters, and Hinata hugged the pair, sobbing happily. Tenten and Anko planted kisses on Naruto's cheeks, and Iruka hugged his former student with pride. Neji received many hugs and slaps on the back from Guy and Lee, who had cheered for both youngsters, and made sure that they hadn't shouted, "Youth." All the damn time. Tsuki and Ayame invited the whole party back to the Ichiraku ramen stand for ramen, the house. Naruto crouched down and covered his face with his hands. When he looked up, tears shone on his cheeks, and he whispered, "This is the best day of my life." Everyone crowded around the crying boy, and he ended up in an enormous group hug, and he started to smile through his tears, before flinging his arms around his girls and leading the charge to the noodle bar. Sarutobi watched all this from a distance, before announcing, "The next match will be held tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and will feature Sasuke Uchiha and Gaara of the Sand." As the night fell, Naruto lay in bed with his four lovely girls, Tenten and Kurama on his left, and Hinata and Anko on his right. His new Chunin jacket hung on the back of his door, and he was full of delicious ramen. He'd managed to make an appointment with the Hokage for 8 in the morning, and slowly, his eyes closed. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Naruto arrived at Sarutobi's office just before the agreed time, and saw him hard at work, filling in paperwork. The Hokage smiled when he saw Naruto, and asked, "What can I do for you, then, Naruto?" Naruto said, "I will tell you how to vanquish your nemesis, and in exchange, I want you to give me some extra ryo once a month. I need 1,000 ryo each for every one of my girls, adding 1,000 ryo for each girl I add to my harem. In return, you will finally defeat your worst nightmare." The third gulped, and, in a trembling voice, whispered, "You mean?" "Yes. I will tell you how to beat the stacks of paperwork you have to do," Naruto confirmed. In second, the third had filled in a form for a standing order, to pay the bearer of this card the agreed sum of 5,000 ryo a month, increasing by 1 with every new girl. Naruto smiled, and said 2 words. "Shadow clones," before jumping out of the window. Sarutobi blinked, and then slammed his palm into his forehead, cursing himself for not thinking of that sooner. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. The Chunin Arena. Sasuke's match against Gaara. Naruto and the girls sat at the edge of the stands, looking right into the arena. This time, Kurama came with them, under a henge so her ears and tails wouldn't cause a ruckus, and Naruto shuddered, remembering what had happened to Lee in his trial fight against the formidable sand demon ninja, Gaara. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Gaara stood calmly in the center of the arena, his sand-filled gourd on his skinny back. As time wore on, the onlookers began to shift restlessly, waiting for something to happen. Just as Hayate Gecko was preparing to announce the Uchiha's failure to show, and thus his forfeiture, a strong wind swirled up, and Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke stood there, a few feet from the Sunanin. The two stood there, staring at each other for a full 5 minutes, sizing each other up. Gecko looked to the VIP stands, where the Kazekage and Hokage sat watching. He brought his hand down in a chopping motion, yelled, "Begin!" and leapt backwards to safety. The two stayed perfectly still, until sand vomited from Gaara's gourd. Hee. Gaara's gourd, hee. Sasuke jumped away from the psychotic raccoon-eyed ninja, who groaned and clamped a hand to his head, moaning, Please. Don't get so mad at me. Mother. I'm sorry, earlier. I know, I made you taste such awful blood, but this time, I'm sure it'll taste so very good." Quote. The sand floating in the air over the crazed redhead suddenly dropped to the ground, and Gaara raised his face to stare at Sasuke, and his eyes were terrible to look upon. "Come on," he growled, and Sasuke watched as the fallen sand gathered itself in a loose pile a foot or 2 in front of the madman he was fighting. Sasuke muttered, "Here goes," and flipped up his shuriken holster, drawing and hurling 2 in a single fluid move. Gaara didn't even twitch. Instead, the sand fountained upwards and became a sand clone who caught the shuriken, then sprayed a wave of sand at the onrushing Sasuke, who leapt upwards to dodge it. The sand clone hurled the shuriken at Sasuke, who threw 2 more, deflecting them in midair. Sasuke flipped over and kicked the clone's arms off, but the clone maintained its shape. He then backfisted it in the throat. The sand clone's eyes widened, and the sand that made up its entire form slithered around Sasuke's forearm, and the clone grinned maniacally. Sasuke tugged, but couldn't break free, so he slammed a palm heel strike into its head, shattering the clone back into sand. As he charged at Gaara, the sand piled into a wall, but Sasuke grinned, and the body flickered behind Gaara, catching him off guard with a fist to the cheek, sending the crimson sand nin spiraling into a heap on the floor, several meters away. Gaara sat up, a crack in his cheek skin, but Sasuke knew that it was So that's your sand armor, huh? In a manner reminiscent of Gaara, he flipped his fingers, beckoning, and taunted, "Come on." Gaara just sat in a pile of sand, glaring at the hated Uchiha. Sasuke shouted, "If you won't do it, then I will." He ran full tilt for Gaara, who kicked up a ramp of sand, but Sasuke flash-stepped past it. Gaara made another, but Sasuke dodged inside it, heading straight at his enemy, spin-kicking him in the gut and launching him again. "What's the matter, Gaara? Is that all you've got?" He sniped, and Gaara slowly rose. Sasuke dashed straight at Gaara as he stood, and Gaara raised a ring of sand to halt a frontal assault. Sasuke just ran in circles around the Sandman, blurring with the speed of his passage. As Gaara tried to follow him, Sasuke flipped over the sand barrier and kicked him in the side, then grabbed Gaara's gourd straps and pulled him straight into a knee-to-the-stomach attack. Now, both Gaara and Sasuke were breathing heavily, Gaara, because he was the one getting battered, and Sasuke because he was behaving like an emo version of Lee. Gaara placed his hands in the horse sign, and his sand formed an orb around him, obscuring him from sight except for a small, star-like gap. Sasuke ran straight for the sand ball, and threw a punch that would have connected, but for a dozen spears of sand that thrust from the ball, nearly skewering him like a duck kebab. A trickle of blood ran from Sasuke's knuckles as the sharp sand cut at him, and he vaulted backwards and the spears retracted. Another trickle of blood dribbled from his leg, and his Sharingan was eating into his chakra reserves with alarming speed. As Sasuke watched, a vortex of sand formed in the air above the sand mochi come on. Gaara's sand ball looks like a mochi dumpling, and slowly formed an eye in the air. Sasuke used the back of his right fist to wipe the blood from his cheek, and flared into motion, throwing a trio of kunai which bounced off, flash stepping above and lashing out and hitting the sand ball, all the while dodging the sand spears and listening to Gaara's foreign babbling. The spears chased Sasuke around the arena, and forced him to flip and twirl like a manic depressive ballerina until he backed off. Glaring at the sandy blob, Sasuke unclipped one of the bands around his left forearm. He backflipped several times, skating straight up the arena wall and crouching there with the tree walking technique, quickly forming a short string of hand signs, placing his palm parallel to the wall. Corposant started flickering and surging around his palm, and he poured more chakra into his hand, increasing the power of the attack he was forming, and the amount of electricity along with it. Sasuke swung his lightning-filled left hand back, carving a path in the wall's surface, and hurtled down the wall, accompanied by the sound of hundreds of chirping avian things. As he plummeted, he left a trail marking his path in the wall, and kept running when he hit the bottom, heading straight for Gaara's sandball. Dodging the spikes, he slammed his left palm into the surface of the orb, yelling, "Chidori!" 1,000 birds. Naruto bolted upright, staring in shock and a little fear at Sasuke's jutsu, knowing that it was of an almost unmatched power. An A-rank assassination jutsu, it was only to be used in the direst of circumstances. What the hell is Kakashi-sensei thinking, teaching something like that to that duck-butt-haired emo? He was jolted from his distraction when an ear-splitting howl burst from the ball of sand. Aj. BLLOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOoooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooooo struggled, but his arm was stuck in the sand ball. He ramped up the jutsu again, and the unearthly howl boomed forth again, if possible, louder than before. He wrenched himself free, followed by an arm of sand, limned with blue veins. The arm flailed about, then drew back into the sand ball, leaving a perfect circle in the side of it. An eerie, echoing growl that sounded like nothing human emanated from the hole. HRRRRAHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHH. Cracks formed on the surface of Gaara's sand prison, and it started to disintegrate, revealing Gaara, panting and clutching a bloody shoulder. His eyes were wild and bloodshot, with that 1,000-yard stare common in shinobi war veterans. Meanwhile, on the stands, people started to fall asleep, even the genin and a few chunin. Naruto's eyes felt heavy, and he started to droop in his seat, but Kurama, who was unaffected, jabbed a finger into his side and gave him a small shock with her chakra, before doing it to the other girls, rousing them from sleep. As they woke, ninja from the village hidden in the sound leapt the walls, preparing to strike. Naruto and his girls could only stare in shock at the phalanx of enemy ninja descending on Konoha. Look at them all, whispered Hinata, and Tenten patted her on the shoulder. It's all right, Hina-chan, we have our swords, and we have Naruto, she said, pulling the Shirohime, the broadsword Naruto gave her when they started making out in her shop, remember? And flourishing it. Hinata nodded, and Anko pulled her wave-edge katana Kurohime from its saya. Hinata drew the aka Hime, and Kurama pulled out a double-headed Naginata, the Ao-hime. The four of them dropped into a stance that surrounded Naruto on all sides, and they chorused, Four-sided blade princess guard. Naruto smiled, and then leapt straight up, clinging to the wall with his chakra. Right, now let's open up a six-pack of whoop-ass on Theseus holes. The five-man battle force started heading for the exit, to see if they could help, but a scream came from the other direction. Oh, help me, please. Somobody, anybody, help me. The group turned to see Sakura cradling an unconscious Ino, with Choji and Shino trying to hold off a dozen Chunin-level sound nin. Naruto sighed, and turned back. Girls, I don't like Sakura at all, but we can't leave her to die. Let's go. As they took in his words, he flash-stepped up to the ninja about to skewer Ino and Sakura with a two-pronged spear, and decapitated him with a blade he pulled from a seal on his belt. His sword shimmered with white flames, and drops of molten light spilled from the edge. The Tsuba had the kanji for honor and strength engraved on it. Wildfire cutter, Redux, he said, and the blade flickered out of existence. Ino shuddered, and opened her eyes. Naruto, did you save us? She asked, and Naruto nodded, for once not sporting his shit-eating grin, looking mature, and stronger than anyone gave him credit for. While Naruto was busy playing the hero, Hinata lashed out, cutting through the guard of one of the Oto nin, dropping him in a heap as she ran him through. Anko whooped like a siren as she slashed down another three in single stroke, and Tenten was counting out the times she'd blocked a strike that would have killed her, toying with her fourth opponent. Slicing through another of his kunai, she stabbed towards High Head but instead dropped the tip and took him in the stomach. The other four were surrounding the motionless Kurama, waiting for her to stop spinning her bladed staff. They were unpleasantly surprised when their heads fell off. Kurama stopped whirling her Naginata around, and poofed out of sight. Shadow clones, rule, the real Kurama said, giggling as she wiped the edge of her blades clean of blood. The girls surrounded Hinata as she shook, unable to believe she'd taken someone's life, even the life of someone trying to hurt her. After a few minutes of murmuring soft words, Shino stepped forward. My thanks, Naruto, he buzzed. We were at our limits. Another minute or two, and we would have been slain, and the girl either raped, or tortured. Naruto smiled briefly, then reactivated his sword, and spun, cutting another ninja in half. The unlucky sound ninja had been trying to sneak up on Naruto to assassinate him, but had kicked a stone and revealed himself. Naruto powered down his light katana and ordered, form up, Shino and Choji. We need your help. My team and I will head to the Hokage and do what we can to assist him. I want you to try and rescue as many civilians as you can. Here, take a few shadow clones with you, they'll take orders from you, and they can fight as well as I can. Naruto performed the jutsu, and 8 clones stood before him. They saluted, and then followed after Shino, who spilt the force in 2, 4 with him, and 4 with Choji. Ino and Sakura headed for the shinobi shelters in the lower town. They both knew they wouldn't be anything other than a liability. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Orochimaru bellowed the third Hokage, glaring at the cage through aged eyes. Why are you doing this? Where is the real cage? Speak. Orochimaru grinned, his long tongue sliming between his pale, slug-like lips. My, how long it has been since we came face to face like this, isn't it, sensei? How have you been? Old. Me. I'm getting younger by the day. Saying this, Orochimaru reached up and pulled at the face he wore, the likeness of the cage of Suna. As he tugged, the skin tore away, and the original Orochimaru peeled out of it, like a bug from a cocoon. He continued, as for the cage, he's dead. I ambushed him just on the border of the land of fire, killed him, and took his skin for my own. For all intents and purposes, I am the cage. Sarutobi's eyes widened upon hearing of his old friend's death, and he shook with rage he hadn't felt in decades. Orochimaru, I should have killed you myself, but I entrusted Jiraiya with doing so. Evidently, he could not strike down the beast he once called friend. Sarutobi shrugged off his robes, and stood in tight-fitting ninja battlewear, and formed a few hand signs. He bit his thumb, and blood welled. Kuchio's no jutsu. An ancient monkey snapped into existence beside him, and growled at the snake Sanin opposite. Well, old friend, the monkey intoned, it looks as though our final battle together approaches. Sarutobi nodded solemnly. You're right, Enma. I have need of your strength one last time. And glad I am to give it, my old ally. Enma smiled in a parody of happiness. They both knew that today, one or the other, would die. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Naruto arrived at the Hokage's location, and immediately noticed 4 Anbu creating a barrier around it. Other Anbu operatives were already clustered around the blue force field, but none was trying to break in. Naruto landed next to the Anbu leader, followed by his women, and asked, "What's the sitch?" The Anbu replied, "Naruto. It seems the Hokage is inside this barrier, but none of our jutsu can break through. Furthermore, anyone who touched it, disintegrates." Naruto reached out with the handle of his sword, and activated it. The blade slid into being, but when it came into contact with the shield, a horrible screeching sound, like fingernails down a giant's chalkboard, ripped through the air. Naruto shrugged, and dispelled the blade. Of course, that would be too easy, he muttered. Right, let's try something a little more extreme. He turned to Anko, Kurama, Hinata and Tenten. Right, girls, I need your help with this. I'm going to make a Rasengan, and I need you to place as much chakra as you can spare into it. Please. The quartet nodded instantly, and placed their hands on Naruto's shoulders and hips. Naruto started pouring all the chakra he had into the construction of a Rasengan, and soon the familiar orb grew from nothing. This time, it wasn't blue, but it swirled with yellow, pink, red and green. He started pulling the Rasengan into a spike, and then it started spinning like a giant drill bit. Naruto slammed the point of his new Rasengan against the barrier, shouting, "Giant Rasengan, heaven-piecing drill." And, unbelievably, the rosin drill began boring a hole in the side of the blue cube. XOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXOXO. Inside the barrier, Sarutobi was being hard-pressed to stay alive. Enma had engaged the first Hokage's reincarnated body, while Sarutobi had combated the second's. Orochimaru had used the summoning, impure world reincarnation, to bring back both the first and second Hokages and sent them into battle in his stead. Enma was evenly matched, but Sarutobi was having a little trouble. He'd managed to tear off the second's arm, but it had just reformed. Just as he was about to try again, Sarutobi was distracted by a glowing drill-like point slicing through the wall and into the skull of the first Hokage's body. The first muttered, "Thank you," as he was permanently destroyed, but Enma was already on the move. Orochimaru had taken advantage of Sarutobi's distraction and had unsheathed the Kusanagi sword, ramming it into Sarutobi's back. Enma grabbed its hilt, and dug his heels in, preventing the moving sword from cutting any deeper. Sarutobi grabbed Orochimaru's shoulders and began babbling out a jutsu at high speed. Snake boar ram rabbit dog rat bird horse snake. And then he clapped his hands, before placing them back on Orochimaru's shoulders. Orochimaru struggled. No, not the dead demon-consuming seal. He wailed. Yes, Orochimaru, the third Hokage of Konohagakure intoned like a death knell. This seal will put an end to your schemes, once and for all. As Orochimaru's arms began to smoke and bleed, Sarutobi Hiruzen collapsed, his souls taken as payment by the seal. Naruto burst through the last layer of the barrier, and saw the third falling. Oh, Kami, no. He threw himself forwards and caught the old man just before he hit the ground. Na Naruto, the third whispered, spitting drops of blood, you must run to my tower, cough cough and spill a drop of your blood splutter on my desk, it will show you what. To do. The third's head lolled limply to the side, and Enma bowed in sorrow, muttering. Though we did not always agree, he was the first summoner to wield me, not use me. The world will be all the poorer for his death. The old monkey king vanished, and Orochimaru tried to raise his mutilated arms. He couldn't, and in his rage and pain, spat, damn that old fool. Once I regain the use of my arms, I'm going to find his soul, and feed it to a snake. Naruto gently laid Sarutobi's head down, and stood, his eyes, glowing. Instead of the 8 trigrams 64 palms, ascension, or 8 trigrams 64 palms, cataclysm, styles, his left eye and hand glowed hot pink, and his right, a rusty yellow. How dare you? You dare disrespect the greatest man in the world. You will pay for your insolence. Naruto bellowed in a thunderous voice that shook the roof. As his girlfriends poked their heads around the hole in the barrier, they gasped in shock at what Naruto had become. AT trigrams 64 palms ultimate shinobi style, overload. Naruto blazed into action, striking faster than even Hinata's Byakugan could follow. Orochimaru was struck thousands of times in the space of a few seconds, and he screamed like a wounded beast. Naruto skidded to a halt, and then started forming another Rasengan. This one glowed in yellow, and looked solid. When he'd finished, it resembled a demon wind shuriken, but glowing. Pain release. Rasen's hurricane. He roared, and flung it at the dismayed Snake Sanin, and Anko cheered as her former teacher was skyrocketed away. Think of Team Rocket's blasting off again. As the snaky bastard's screams faded, and the remaining sound nin were cut down, Naruto's eyes turned cornflower blue again. His hands stopped glowing, and he sank to his knees next to the body of his mentor and friend, and sobbed brokenly. Anko, Hinata, Tenten, and Kurama crept up to him and gently rubbed his arms and back as he cried. The four of them were also weeping, for the lose of a great man. Naruto stayed with Sarutobi's corpse, lamenting the fact that he'd been too late to